Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, Breakup Coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, my beautiful brave hearts. How is everyone doing? So today I have a special contribution from parent bravehearts who have gone through the Get Over Your Ex program. And they are going to come on and talk to you about parenting and how they might have used some of these tools that I teach on the podcast to apply them with their children, have conversations about emotions, all of that. I don't want to spend too much time doing a whole intro, but you're going to hear from a couple of bravehearts, their experiences and words of wisdom when it comes to helping your children through your divorce or your breakup. So I am sending you all the love and I can't wait to talk to you next time. Hello, my beautiful brave hearts. I have an amazing guest here today named Gia. She is a Braveheart alumni who recently went through the Get Over Your Ex program. And I wanted her to come on and share her experience of helping her children, her kids, while she was going through her heartbreak separation. And because she is a parent, I feel like she's going to have so many great tangible tools, words of advice, and words of wisdom to share with all of you parent bravehearts. Welcome, Gia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks, Dorothy, for having me.
Yes. All right. So why don't you start out by just telling us a little bit about your experience when it came to applying the tools inside of the Get Over Your Ex program to helping your children with heartbreak? We'll start broad and then we'll go more narrow.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so everyone, I hope you guys all know Dorothy's tools. They're amazing. Okay, and I also use them with my kids as applicable as I can make them for any situation, even when they're mad about like toys and stuff. Okay, so I try to do that and help them with that. A lot of the whole process of using Dorothy's tools, we're making sure that we didn't make it about the kids. Like anything we were going through, whatever was happening inside our relationship, it was to make sure that what we were addressing and what I was addressing using all of the tools I got from the Braveheart program was to make sure that I didn't leak any of, like, for example, like the dirty pain and the making it about me and leaking any of that into my kids' lives. And it was a lot of work and it's really hard, much easier said than done. So I use a lot of the model to do that and just a lot of thought shifting in order to create this environment where I got to control how the result would look like for my kids because I had a lot of the tools that would challenge what society thought or even what my own family thought of what a family looks like and what it doesn't look like.
Oh, so beautifully said. I feel like you had so many amazing aha moments throughout that process. Why don't you give us what's one obstacle that you can think of that you went through when it came to helping your children? Can you think of any right now off the bat?
So one of the obstacles I went through and that I was afraid that my children would face really was that whole saying that, like, if you get divorced, you have a broken family.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes, exactly. And I did post that in the Braveheart community at that time. And a lot of that challenge was, why is it broken? Right? Like, why can't your family look different? And what about it would make it broken just because the relationship has ended, but your family unit just looks totally different than what it was before, but none of the love had gone or changed. And something that we did with my kids was we started reading them books about what different families looked like. And that it had nothing to really do with a breakup or a divorce. It just, you could have just one mommy or two dads or one dad, and a lot of books to teach them, like, there are different types of families, but love is the common thing in all the families. And that didn't mean that anything was broken or different or abnormal.
So good. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was beautiful. I love the idea of books and helping explore those different perspectives. It's really amazing.
Yes. And also because my kids are still young. So
I was just going to say, how old are they? Yeah. 3 and
Yeah, there's
7.
mhm.
That's important because we have a number of people on the podcast this week talking about this topic specifically. And so with younger kids, 3 and 7, what do you feel like their main challenges were? Did you
So my 7-year-old, my son, he's autistic. And so having any huge life-changing event really could spiral him into regression. And that's also why we did books, also because my 3-year-old is too young to understand even the concept of a divorce or a breakup, or what that means. The biggest challenge for them has been that we don't live together and that they want to be with both mommy and daddy. And I know that, I was very blessed and lucky that my husband and I are extremely amicable. And what we really focused on was trying to let our kids, even at that age, have as much control without imploding their world, while still maintaining what limitations there were for them. So, like for example, if my kids decide that day, like, hey, we really want to go hang out with dad, I'm flexible enough to say, yeah, okay, if you want to go hang out with your dad and go stay at his house, like that's cool. Even though I'm supposed to have you today, totally okay. So that they could feel like they had some control over the process of everything that's happening.
So important. I loved that. I loved how you guys did that and handled that. And I remember um the story about the broken home, and it's so interesting the different challenges that come up for them.
Yeah, there are. And even my daughter will, some days my son is like, I want to go with my dad. And some days my daughter's like, well, I want to stay with mom, you know?
That was one of my
And,
specific questions. Can we talk about that? Because you're not the
yeah.
only. So how do you handle that? And because I think as a parent, it would be really hard to not make that mean anything about you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And you guys, my son, okay, every day that I pick him up, he's such a daddy's boy. He'll be like, why did you come get me and not dad? Right. And then you have to be like, it's not personal. He's like 7. His dad is his favorite person in the whole wide world. But my daughter is like, well, I'd rather hang out with mom than hang out with dad. Right. And it's not personal either. And a lot of the times, Dorothy, like, unless one of us has something really important going on, if they choose to, like, one kid goes with one parent, one kid goes to the other parent, we let them have that choice because we don't want to force anything where they feel like, wow, like I have to go over there because you guys live separately, versus I get the choice to stay here if I want to stay here, and I get 2 homes. And that's something we talked about too, is I get 2 homes that I get to choose from, 2 places where I get to have a safe haven. And so a lot of the time, depending on, what it could be like what your custody looks like, even though ours is split 50-50 down the middle. It just depends. Really, we give our kids the choice of, if that day they want to stay with dad, they stay with dad. If that day both of them want to stay with opposite parents, then they stay with opposite parents. That actually happened like yesterday.
That's so powerful. And do you feel like there has to be like an equal amount of time at each parent's house, or like, are you concerned about that at all? This is just my curiosity because I
Oh,
have not experienced this before.
no. Even though on paper everything, our custody is split 50-50, how we see it, and especially how I see it, is as the parent, like, your time is always going to be precious with them, and quality over quantity, right? And also by just giving them that, like, you don't have to be with me 50% of the time just because it's on paper. That's okay. Like, I'm still your parent, I'm still your mom. And if you really want to chill with your dad today, like, chill with your dad. Like, you're his son, you're his daughter, of course. It's like, it's funny that you brought that up, because I just talked about that with my husband this morning. Is some weeks you'll have them more, and some weeks I'll have them more because you need me to have them so you can get what you need to get done. But at the end of the day, I'm the parent, and if I have them more that week, that's okay. Like, they're my kids, I'm going to take care of them, right? And if I
Hmm.
have them less that week, you're the parent and you're going to take care of them, and that's okay too.
I love that. And it gives them so much autonomy, and like growing up with autonomy and showing them how to use their autonomy. I think that that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I wonder how many parents actually do that. Do you feel like, how do I put this? Do you feel like that came naturally to you to offer that up to them as an opportunity, or was that something you had to think through, or how did you come to the idea of doing that and giving them the autonomy of choosing?
So, I actually came to that because one of the things we had made a promise to each other, my husband and I, at the beginning of all of this was that we didn't want anything between us to affect how loved they felt or what choices they were able to make even at that age. So it really came naturally to me, just because I felt like, why would I take that away from them? Right.
Mm,
Like, no matter what age they are, unless, for example, like the other parent was a danger, which this is not the case. But if the other parent loves their kids as much as you love your guys' children, why would you remove that opportunity from them to just have that freedom to say, hey, I just want to hang out with my mom today or my dad today? And so it came really naturally for us. And also, my husband is a child of divorce, and he remembers very well how negatively it affected him to have a constringent schedule that way, or to have one parent, only have him for the weekend and then he didn't get to see him for the whole week, and so I
mhm.
was like, I don't want that for our kids, because I want them to go to see you as much as they want to see you and as much as they
Yeah.
want to see me.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. I think it's going to be really, really helpful and useful for other parents out there. So thank you.
Yes, and remember that we just like, we came from a place of love and a lot of love for our children. Because I think, many times in what I've experienced and what I've seen is when people go through divorce, they make it a lot about them and they forget that you have to come from a place of love for your kids. Even whatever you guys are having on the side, that's your guys' issues and has nothing to do with your children.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Okay,
Yes.
so I want to know, for a fellow parent Braveheart who is having a hard time helping their children during the divorce or a breakup, what are some words of wisdom you would share with them?
You know, I hope I answer this well. um, Words of wisdom. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with taking care of your needs first. Sometimes you have to come before your kids. And at the beginning of this breakup, you guys, I never understood, like, being so heartbroken that you could not eat until I was there. Okay. And I was like, at this place where I was like, not the best mom and not the best version of me to take care of my kids. And really, I had to go through that and say, like, okay, wait, right now, a lot of the times, like 99% of the times, it's about Ben, but sometimes 1% of the time it's about making sure that I can take care of my own needs, and I shouldn't feel guilty about taking care of my own needs, because when I do that, I'm able to take care of theirs.
Oh, so important. I think that is absolutely important. That's got to be so difficult to do sometimes without feeling guilty for it.
Yes, you're always feeling guilty as a parent when you think you need to be super parent, all the time, and you just can't. It's not humanly possible.
And it's like, what is even super parent? We would be super parent and be like, we're still not doing enough.
Exactly. Yep. I feel like that all the time. Like, oh man, am I doing this right? But I'm like, no, I am, because my kids are, they're healthy, happy kids. So,
I
yes.
love it. So good. Okay. So, what about a tangible tool? Do you have a tangible tool that you feel like would be useful that they know about that maybe either you did with your kids, kind of similar to like the book thing? Is there anything
Mhm.
else like a tangible tool or an activity you did with them or something that was really useful?
You know, for us, it was kind of different than I think most typical families, because my son is autistic. So how we explain things through him we didn't make big deals out of it, right? Like, I know that traditionally and typically it's like you sit down and you have this big talk and all of these things, and it also depends on the personality of your kid. So our therapist, my son's therapist at the time, had advised us to do it during a play, do it during playtime, where you didn't make it a big deal and you just made it part of, hey, this is going to happen and we want to make sure you're aware of it. But we didn't sit them down and say, like, oh, your world is about to explode, right? We
Mhm.
didn't do that. We sat down, we played, and we said, hey, daddy's going to get his own apartment and you're going to have another room. And we did that through like a playtime, so that it wasn't all focused on, like, wow, this explosion is happening and you need to feel like the world is crumbling. So a lot of what we did was like, we did that through playtime. And with my daughter, it was more like, hey, do you want to go? We did things like, hey, let's go check out dad's new apartment. And we did that together, right? Like dad's new apartment and check out your new room. So those were as tangible as we could get to it with the circumstances that we have.
That makes sense though. I kind of like that because it's less fear-based,
Yes.
right? It's almost like we don't need to, make it a big, like if we don't make it a huge big deal, maybe there's like less fear is kind of what I'm
Yes,
seeing.
exactly.
I
And
wish
and
I,
it was
go ahead.
well, yeah. So with our son and our therapist, they were like, it also depends on your kid's personality, especially if they're an anticipator. Okay, so my son is an anticipator, and if we would have told him 3 months ago, he would have been anxious and anticipating for 3 months. Versus, let's just tell you when it gets closer to time, and while we're doing playtime, and
Mhm.
everything is calm, and we're not seriously sitting you down and talking and making everything so scary. When if it's not scary for us, all the tools I got from the, Get Over Your Ex program, if I'm not coming from a place of fear and I explain it to him, he won't be fearful of it either. And so that's really what we did.
That's beautiful because that is hard because especially some parts of it are unknown. So not only are you dealing with the unknown, then it's going to be unknown for the kids too. And if you can come from a place of abundance and security and calm, that's going to be very different than you trying to mask a bunch of fear and having that conversation.
Yes,
So important.
absolutely. Yes, and we came from a place of very, very calm. Our kids were, they didn't have a freak out even as we transitioned into my husband moving out and them, having separate places.
This is so useful. Literally, I think you answered all of the questions for this one specific person who reached out with a bunch of questions. So thank you so, so much. Is there anything else that you feel like would be useful for anyone listening in, or anything else that you wanted to share from your journey?
So for my journey, okay, we all know about, if you're, in the program, the pillars, right? The love yourself pillar was the most important one for me. And that one was the one that helped me to be able to show up exactly how I am right now. So once that pillar was like, oh my God, like I really love myself. I wake up with me. I have my own back all the time, and I get to choose how I show up so that my kids can see that I'm showing up as calm and happy. And even through sadness, I get to choose all of that. That was one of the biggest things that helped me the most. So really choose to love yourself. Choose to love yourself, even the parts where you're like, that's ugly, but it's okay. Love that part anyway, because you show up pretty amazing when that happens.
I'm so proud of you, Gia. So proud of you on so many levels. So thank you again. I appreciate your time. I know that the parents listening in appreciate your time. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. I hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too.
Hello, my beautiful brave hearts. How's everyone doing today? I have a wonderful guest named Kara. So she is here today. She is a Braveheart alum inside of the Get Over Your Ex program. And she has gracefully and kindly volunteered to talk to us a little bit about being a parent while going through a divorce and how she helped her children, things that she wished she would have done, so that you guys have some tangible tools, next steps, and helpful hints from parents just like you. So, Kara, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate your time. And I know that the Brave Hearts listening also appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to
Yay.
help.
Thank you. Okay, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. Why don't you go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're from, how old you are, like what's kind of the circumstances that you're under that led you to signing up for the Get Over Your Ex program? Want to tell us any or all of those?
Sure. So yeah, I'm 46 years old. I had been married for 12 years and got divorced about 5.5 years ago. My divorce with my ex is not the reason why I joined the Get Over Your Ex program. It was a relationship after that. But during my marriage for 12 years, we had two great kids who are now 18 and 14. But when we got divorced, they were 9 and 12. So that's kind of my situation now. we're good co-parents now. My kids are doing great. But there were definitely some obstacles and challenges along the way, and navigating through, the divorce, and then even dating afterwards and all that good stuff. So
Yeah. So why don't you share some of those? What were some of the biggest obstacles that you remember that your children were going through during the divorce?
yeah.
Or even like you said, moving forward into a new relationship. And then did they have any um obstacles when it came to the breakup that you currently went through?
Yeah. So for the divorce, I mean, we my older son probably felt it a little bit more. He was a little bit older. My younger son was kind of, um, he seemed okay. And, my older son had some anxiety, and I think he had some anxiety to begin with. And, during the divorce, or a little while after, we separated our home. We both moved into separate houses, and he, would call me at nights telling me like just how scared he was, and so, talking through with him. I also had a therapist at the time. I obviously didn't know this work at the time. That was a while ago. And but I did, have some help talking through like his fears and anxieties. And it just turns out like he would, like I said, he would call me when he was at his dad's house, and I would, kind of talk him through that. That was kind of scary for me, on my end, because I knew that he also had to be with his dad. But then, he would call me and want me to, talk with him. And the biggest thing is that during that time, my ex and I, we were, our kids were the most important thing to us, so we would always communicate. So communicating, and then just talking through with him, like even at the time I was like, what are you thinking, like why are you afraid, like there's nothing scary there, like just trying to talk through what his fears were, the thoughts that are creating the fears, which I didn't even know that that's what I was doing. But that's what we would ask him, is like, why,
So
what is he
good.
thinking that he's scared? Yeah. So,
Mhm.
so that was, during the divorce. And then I think a couple of years later, well, a little while after that, we tried to get back together, but it didn't work. And it was nothing happened, it was just, we just decided it wasn't going to work. And then, my boys and I had a talk about, one day we're driving in the car, on a road trip, and they just like poured their hearts out to me about all the things that they were afraid of, like if we started dating again. And I told them that that eventually I would start going on dates with other people, and they obviously wanted me and my ex to get back together. So that was definitely something that's always a strong push, like desire for them, is that we would get back together. And so they thought, well, if you start dating somebody, that definitely means you're not getting back together. And then if you start dating somebody, that means you're not going to be friends with him ever. You're not going to be friendly with him. We're not going to be. And I just had to assure them that that means like we're always a family. I think that was always something that we told them all the time, is that we are always going to be a family. It's just a different family. You have you have two houses now, but we're still one family, and we're always both here for you, and that we'll always be friends or communicate. I told them that we would always be friends, which we were friendly. I don't have any, we didn't have a bad relationship. It was just, it didn't work out. We were much better, not being married together. There wasn't really even any fighting. It was just something like no love and things like that we just knew that wasn't kind of what a marriage was about. So yeah, that was so that was navigating that part of the divorce. And then when recently, when I started 2 years ago, when I met my ex, which is the reason that I'm in the Get Over Your Ex program, I didn't. I was always like, I'd never wanted to introduce them to anybody that I was dating. I kept that separate from them. Like I had them 50% of the time, and my ex-husband had them 50% of the time. So the 50% of the time that I wasn't with them is when I would date. So when I started that relationship with my ex, it was like really just our relationship. We didn't really have anything to do with each other's families or kids right away. And even for me, I think I pushed it a little too far. I was just always afraid that because I knew their fears that, they didn't, they might not accept it, or that, I'm putting all of these thoughts into their heads, or these feelings that I think that they would have. And I really don't know what they would have had. But actually, so about a year into the relationship, I introduced them to him, and my older son was 17 at the time and did not accept him at all. So that was rough. And yeah, so it was kind of just, we kind of kept a separate relationship. Well, as much as we could. I mean, we tried to, be part of each other's lives and families. It was easier with his family and me than it was with my kids and him. So that put a little, challenges in the relationship. But when we did break up over the fall, I think my kids were starting to accept it, but then, then we broke up. And then, my son actually felt bad that he didn't, accept him. He didn't tell me, but he told my family, my mom, and that, he's like, I really feel bad that I did that. I hope it, wasn't my fault that, that happened. And, of course we told him that wasn't his fault, but yeah, so that's kind of my story with my
That's
kids.
amazing. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's going to be so useful for other parents who might be going through the same thing to hear that, number one, they're not alone. And number two, you do end up making it out on the other side. Like you and your kids seem to have an amazing relationship still. Everything's okay, right?
Yeah.
And your kids are doing great. And that's an amazing thing. I think it's really fascinating that you were, even before you knew about thought work, maybe you were almost not coaching them, but guiding them through their feelings and their thoughts that they have. And just staying curious and open to what those fears were, which is very important.
Yeah, I think I think the major thing is just listening to them. Teenage boys may not always want to talk when they were a little bit younger, but just asking them questions. And, at first I was like, well, how would you feel if I started dating again? And, and then they, told me exactly how they felt. And then I was like, well, every once in a while they'd ask, or they'd be, wondering, or they would ask me what I'm doing this weekend, or, they would always question. So just staying just asking them questions about how they would feel about certain things, or, hey, I am starting to go on, dates now. And, what do you think about that? And, you can tell right away how they feel. They obviously my kids didn't like it, but that doesn't mean that, I think that part I wish I would have done differently when they said, oh, I don't like it. Then that made me afraid to actually do it.
I was just going to ask you a question about that. So yeah, I guess my question about that is, when your kids have thoughts and feelings about you and what you're choosing to do with your life, you mentioned you might do it differently. How would you do it now?
I think I would, I think I let their feelings kind of dictate what happens more so as, what my feelings were, and just working it out, with them kind of. I just, kind of thought oh, well, now I can't do that, or now if I do that, they're going to feel like this all the time. And, so now I think I would, going into it, just, I always think I would definitely do it earlier. I would, explain to them a little bit more about how, relationships, this, just wanting them all to be part of my life at, kind of towards the beginning. And, yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's also remembering that their thoughts and feelings don't have to be your thoughts and feelings. So you can help them working through their thoughts and feeling. And I'm saying this as I'm not a parent, you guys, but this is how I plan on raising my children, is they can have thoughts and feelings, but they don't have to be your thoughts and feelings. And do you feel like that's realistic to do as a parent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely I think the better the better way,
Yeah.
sometimes I don't know, as moms probably feel bad,
Mhm.
that they're having thoughts and feelings, but and you take them on as yourself, and that's not good.
Right. Because we really can't control our children's thoughts and feelings. That's
Yeah.
wild, right? Like we really want to, but we can't because we
Mhm.
cannot determine their thoughts, which
Mhm.
is what determines their feelings. And we try to control their circumstances and we can to a point, but sometimes even when the circumstances are perfect, they have thoughts that produce negative emotion because
Yeah.
it's the natural 50-50, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Amazing. And I also think about it too of like, I just want to be like an example of what's possible to my children. So I also, when it comes to divorce, just from my outside perspective, it's like, I would rather, if I have to go through a divorce later on in my life and I've had children, I would rather follow my inner voice, my inner knowing, and what's best for me and show them that that's possible for them if they were ever in the same situation as me. So I think that's like a level of bravery that moms and dads have to experience when they're going through divorce or a breakup.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's a great, yeah, being an example of doing that is definitely, um, yeah,
It's like,
beneficial for them.
right. It's like showing them that they might sometimes in life have to choose like the least comfortable route.
Mhm.
But that's going to be like the best for them, which is also the best for the collective.
Yeah, for sure. And in fact, I just coached my son through, coached him, but helped him through his breakup with his girlfriend, which is exactly the same thought. Is that I was trying to explain to him that, what was best for him, what was he feeling, and trying to get him to listen to his gut feeling and, do what he needed to do for himself. So
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So are you using, that's kind of a question that I had too, is are you using any of the tools that you've learned inside of the Get Over Your Ex program with your kids?
oh yes, I do. I mean, I try to, anytime I do try to ask them what their thoughts are, if they're having feelings. And then like with my son, I was trying to say, like, tell him to listen to his like inner voice. And,
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. It's amazing now that I can, help them through that.
That makes my heart so happy.
Yeah.
Like that makes my heart so happy because all you parents, your kids are going to have their heart broken at some point and we're dreading when that happens, but you'll have the tools now to help them handle it differently, like a brave heart. And then your kids get to be brave hearts. Like, how cool is that?
I know, I was so excited that night too. I was going to write it in the community and I totally forgot, but
You
I was so
should.
excited. I was like, oh, I
You
have,
have to post it in the community now. You
yeah,
have to post
sure.
it.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah, it was fun.
Amazing. Okay. So, what are some words of wisdom you'd share with other fellow parent bravehearts who are having a hard time helping their children during their divorce or heartbreak?
I really think that the one thing to understand is that, or to know, is that the kids will be okay. I think in general, your kids will be okay if you're, you listen to, try to be there for them, listen to them, talk to them. Sometimes they don't want to talk, and that's, okay too. But just, letting them know that you're there for them and that they do come out on the other side, and they're usually okay. They're okay. My kids were okay, and I know from a lot of experience with others that it's okay. And I think you have to sometimes, I think, like we decided, like, we don't ever say anything bad about each other, like as co-parents, like to around our kids. And I think that they that's good, for they have a lot of feelings already and emotions, and not to like um have that extra burden of like your feelings and emotions too. Like that sometimes is not, you know, um, that was one thing that I think we did really well, doing that. And I think that that was helpful for our kids. But I do really think that, your kids will be okay. And as long as they know that they're, you can talk to them and ask them questions, I think they're going to be okay.
I love that. So your kids are going to be okay, guys. Did you guys hear that? Very important. And this is a very woo woo part of me, but I'm like, I think all of your kids chose you as a parent intentionally before they came here on earth. So they knew they were going to experience this. They chose it as a part of their soul journey. Again, you don't have to get on board with that belief, but I think it's really useful. I tell myself that with my mom, and I'm like, I chose this mom for a reason. She got some really good aspects, and she's got some really big things that I have to work on around her. And that's amazing. And I'm so proud and so happy to call my mom. And I'm so glad that she did what was best for her, however many years ago, when she finally decided to leave. And I look up to her in that way of like, thank you, mom, for doing what was right for you. Thank you so much. I know that was like a really hard decision, and I'm proud. So maybe your kids will even think that way of you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That would be nice, to
Yeah.
think that way. I mean, there's also, people who are, other things that you try to explain to them too, like, okay, well, now they have, well, my kids now they have two houses, and they have, kids don't like to like go back and forth, but it also teaches them like responsibility of like their, having their things at both houses. I mean, it's definitely a learning experience, but I think it also kind of makes them a little bit stronger too.
Yes, very resilient, and a little bit more life experience under their belt. Yeah, I love that. And Daisy, actually, in her book, I told you a little bit about before we went live and started recording, and everyone listening, you've heard the podcast yesterday with Daisy. She has an entire chapter in here about the bonuses of being a kid who's had their parents go through divorce. An entire chapter dedicated to the bonuses of it. So I think that's really cool. And a part of it is the learning stuff, like the skills aspect of learning these sets of skills at whatever age sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, I do truly believe that it's hard to understand heartbreak and watch people go through heartbreak when you've never experienced it before in that way. And when kids are so young and their brains are still developing, it makes sense as to why they have all these questions and they have all these thoughts and all these things. But I genuinely, like, I did not understand my mom's point of view until I went through my own heartbreak. And then all of a sudden it just became so clear for me. And I was a little bit older when it all happened. Like I was graduating high school when it happened, and my brother was younger. And so maybe it has to do with age a little bit, but I do believe like they understand.
Yeah.
They're learning to understand.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Okay. Is there anything else you might think, or that you think might be useful, a tangible tool or anything else that you can think of for other Braveheart parents who are listening in?
I think that was really the major things that I wanted to share with everybody. Yeah.
Amazing. Again, thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate you coming on, being vulnerable, talking about this topic with us. I know that the Bravehearts listening in are just so appreciative of you talking through your experience so that they can take some of your snippets and words of wisdom and gold pieces and start applying it with their kids. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I hope it helps.
Yes. Hello, my Bravehearts. I have Robin here, fellow Braveheart alumni, who is open to sharing her experience with this work and her children and what obstacles she went through. So, Robin, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this topic for other Mama Bravehearts, as I would call them. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right. So go ahead and tell us, what are some of the struggles that you saw your children going through when it came to the separation, and how did you help them overcome those struggles?
So my children are fairly young. They're 2, 3, 5. So talking about it is most relevant to the 5-year-old. You have to go obviously based on their ages. Difficulties with them, they have their own emotions. Obviously, I was going through it after the separation and trying to walk them through it the best way I could, having the tools for myself to manage my emotions, to give myself time, where I could break down, where I could just feel what I needed to feel, and then regroup and be more put together for them. I guess passing on, just letting them know that it's okay to be sad. It's okay to have all these emotions coming up, helping them name the emotions coming up. What do they feel like? What do we do with them? The biggest challenges were the move. So moving locations. Papa is now in a different house. So that transition that actually just took place last week. And that for us, that was the biggest, that has been the biggest adjustment for them.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And literally, as you were answering that question, it really sounds like you having the tools for yourself and learning how to process emotion, learning how to allow emotion to be there was like very beneficial to help your children. So let's talk about age too, because I'm glad that you brought that up, because I'm assuming our younger children don't really understand what's going on. Is it a problem then for them? Other than the 5-year-old, like for 2 and 3?
They do know what's going on to the
Okay.
extent that they know that there is a big change. So
Okay. Mm-hmm.
when we see that they're reacting, so it could be that they're having more fits, they're more angry, they're acting differently. That's how they tell us that something isn't quite right, that they are feeling things.
Yeah.
They pick up a lot more than we give them credit for. So
Ooh.
yeah.
So then how do you help them through that?
I think the best way that I could help them was sitting with them, even if they're small. You still talk to them and try and name what they're feeling. I got books for my children, age appropriate books for each one, and we would sit and look at the pictures and explain what was happening. You know, Papa's going here, Mommy's going here, but we still love you. And I really think that me having done the work for myself, showing up much more calmly, happier most of the time, that was a huge shift for them as well.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at us. If you're falling apart and if you're angry and if you're demonstrating chaos to them, then that's what they're feeling and that's what they're internalizing. But if you are the calm, then they will pick up that calm.
Oh, so good, Robin. That's so important. And so then with the 5-year-old, so the move was the biggest transition. And because I had someone reach out on Instagram recently, and she asked me, like, my child, I think was around the same age, around 5 or 6, keeps asking to be at daddy's house while he or she is with her. So my instant reaction to that is like, she's going to have to learn how to have her feelings around that and not react to the emotion. But from your standpoint, kind of what might you do in that situation, since you're a real life human mom, and how would you help your child process through wanting to be at daddy's house when he has to be at mom's?
So I have those questions as well. I get that question as well. Something that has been helping my son is having a calendar. So he knows exactly how much time he's spending with mommy and how much time he's then spending with daddy. I think managing your emotions, as you said, around the issue and presenting it positively as you can, as neutrally as you can, will help your child as well. And if you can keep a good communication going with the other parent, then you can always FaceTime, Zoom, phone calls.
Well, I also think about like not making it mean anything about you. I could see a lot of human brains wanting to be like, oh my gosh, my child likes the other parent better, and I'm just not a good enough parent, or I'm not as fun as the other parent, or like making it mean all these things about themselves. That's not necessarily true. So I think when you've learned how to process your emotions and really built a strong relationship with yourself, it would be easier to handle those kinds of situations with your child than if you haven't done those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because your children can trigger insecurities in you. In my situation, my ex having a new girlfriend right away, and she's in the children's lives, that then they come home and they're talking about this other person and these things that they're doing, and you need to manage that, because it's not fair to your children it's not fair to your children if you're showing up as like negative and hateful towards this new person.
Yeah. And
that doesn't benefit anyone.
Great position.
Exactly. You just need to be open. They need to be able to talk to you about anything. Even if it's hard, they need to know that no matter what they come to you with, you can handle it.
Yeah. So good. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, because I think it's going to be very useful to hear some tips and tricks from an actual parent who's done this work. So thank you. Is there anything else that you feel like would be beneficial to another Braveheart who has kids and is, experiencing a separation, divorce, or breakup?
You as a mother have to come first. And I think we hear a lot, the kids come first. No, they can't, because you need to fill your own cup before you can help them. Put on your own oxygen mask before you put on theirs. So get yourself together, ask for help. I had to ask for help in the beginning because I was completely destroyed. I had people coming to help me with my children. And that was the best thing I did for myself and for them, because I came back even better and even stronger.
I love that for you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yes. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course, where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.